I hope this is visible to all. So, first of all, let us understand the difference between the two categories, that's true, false, not given, and yes, no, not given. Now, when we are attempting the answers, psychologically, it should mean the same, that whether something is true or it is not. But if we talk about the technicality, then whenever you are getting the true, false, not given questions, that means we are relying more on the facts. That means whatever the passage is presenting to us is actually the fact. But when we are talking about yes, no, not given, then we are talking about the opinions. Like we want to know what the author thinks about it, right? So if we are talking about the thought process of the author, then in that case, we'll be having yes, no, not given. And when it's about the facts, we have true, false, not given. But as a person who is appearing for the exam, it's not important for you to know this difference. What is more important is to understand each and every terminology. That's what do we mean by true, then false, then not given, right? So when we are talking about true, that means that whatever question has been given to us is exactly present in the paragraph. So when you are looking at the question, the first thing comes that you need to understand the question, understand the statement properly. So when you are having your statement number 1, please understand that statement properly. I'll be breaking it up in parts. First, I'm just highlighting the differences. Then once you have understood the question, you have understood the line that was given to you, then after that you are supposed to move to the passage and see if the line that you think is corresponding to the question, then you match with it, that whether it is exactly the same thing or is there any part that's missing or is having a contradiction. Correct? So when it'll be a false statement, then there'll be a contradiction. And when we are talking about not given, that means that there'll be some part that'll be missing in that particular passage, right? So now here, what happens most of the time, which makes our answers go incorrect, is that we keep on focusing on matching the keywords. We have always heard that whenever we are attempting IELTS reading, the first thing that we need to do is to find the keywords, right? But over here, when we are attempting true, false, not given, once we are able to figure out the keyword, we'll straight away mark it as an answer, right? That means whatever was there in the question, if you think that the main word of the question is there in the passage as well, then you'll consider the answer to be true, which will be an exactly the way in which you can mark the incorrect answer. So you are supposed to analyze the statement first, and then you are supposed to match the answer and not just match the keywords. I hope you are able to understand this difference. Now, after this, what I would like to suggest you is that paraphrase the question. That means the statement that you get, kindly paraphrase it. Now, what will happen because of paraphrasing is once you have paraphrased it in your own language, that means your original language, then in that scenario, what you'll be able to do is you'll be able to understand the statement better. So once you are able to understand the statement better, for sure you'll end up finding the answer more easily. And then the last thing, that is, be aware of qualifiers. Now, what do we mean by qualifiers? This is very, very important. So please note it. When we have words like always, mostly, never, that means any word which is talking about the quantity or is making the question very specific, we'll be treating those words as qualifiers. So whenever you see those words, please circle them. If in the statement of the question it's written always, please circle it and recheck it in the passage. If in the passage also it is written always, or it is just a general statement where the always word is missing, because that is how you are most of the times going to mark your answer incorrectly. Now we are having one more example, and for this I want you all to give me your answers. I am saying a statement, most of the students have passed the exam. And the question is, all girls have passed the exam. So what the answer will be? So I'm saying that the statement is, most of the students have passed the exam. And my statement is that all girls have passed the exam. So what do you think is the answer? True, false, or not given? So the answer to this question is not given. Now let's see why not given is correct. The statement says most of the students have passed the exam. That means that if there were 100 students in the class, 80 students have passed the exam. Correct? The question says all girls have passed the exam. Now, we don't know whether all girls have passed the exam or not. We just know that the maximum number of students of the class, they have passed the exam. Maybe the minority which failed was actually of girls only. So we don't know that thing. That thing has not been clarified. So therefore, the answer over here will become not given. I hope it's clear. So this is the passage that we are having. Now over here, I want you to first of all understand how we are exactly supposed to go by it step by step, right? First of all, whenever you get it, make sure that you read the title. Okay, here I think the title is missing, but always read the title first and then read the statements. First of all, if it has been asked yes, no, not given, then your answer should be in yes, no, not given. For writing yes, you cannot write true, and you cannot do vice versa also. If the question has been asked in the form of yes, no, not given, you will write in the form of yes, no, not given. And you cannot write in short forms. That means you cannot write y for yes, no, n for no, and ng for not given. You have to write the full words. So this is the number one thing. Don't attempt this mistake, because if you do it, even if your answer is correct, you will not be scored. Okay. The second thing is read the statements first. That means the questions that you are having, read your questions first. Let's read the questions together. The polar bear lives in the South Pole. That means they are telling us where the polar bear lives in the South Pole. So here we have to mark polar bear, South Pole, lives. Also keep this in mind, it's lives, not lived. If over here it would have been written lived, then we would have had to focus on that. Here it is written lived, then over there also it should have been talked in the past tense. And if not, then the answer would have been something else. Okay. So please note the tenses as well when you're reading the statement. The second statement is there is no land in the South Pole. So no land. Here the word is no. So you have to note this word also. This is what? This is a qualifier. Correct? Next, we have the polar bear can stand up on its back legs. And the last one is the polar bear cannot swim. The polar bear cannot swim. So these are the four statements. Now we have to read the passage. I know that if you have been practicing the reading module, you must have been told that focus on the keywords. But over here, I want to tell you that please focus on understanding more than the keywords, because keywords actually sometimes land you on the wrong answer. The passage is written in such a way that you'll always be able to figure out the keywords, but the meaning will be different. So that is why many a time student come and say that ma'am, it was written over here, this word was written over there, then why the answer is not true? Okay, so please do understand the meaning. And for that purpose, I always say that once you have read the questions, once you have read every single statement, please start reading the passage. Okay, now we'll be reading this passage together. Focus on how we are doing this reading. Okay, we have already done the questions, we have already read the questions. The polar bear is a very big white bear. We call it the polar bear because it lives inside the Arctic Circle near the North Pole. Okay, here one thing. This is not about the reading module, but because we're having a session, let me just tell you. Many a times we are confused about the correct pronunciation of the word the. Is it the or is it the? Now see, when I'm saying Arctic, I have to say the Arctic. And when I'm saying North Pole, I have to say the North Pole. So that means that if after the first sound that is coming, if it is of a vowel, then we'll pronounce the as the. But if the sound that is coming after the is of a consonant, then we'll be pronouncing it as the. So I hope this was useful for you. I just thought that I should share it with you. It lives inside the Arctic Circle near the North Pole. There are no polar bears at the South Pole. Now see, with this, I'm getting to know the location. And over here, my first question was about the location itself. The polar bear lives in the South Pole. And what is written here? There are no polar bears at the South Pole. So that means the polar bears do not live at all in the South Pole. So the answer over here would be no. Now, let's move on to the second question. The second question is, there is no land in the South Pole. See, most of the times, true, false, not given, yes, no, not given are going to be in a sequence. It's very rare that they won't follow a sequence. So you don't have to be very confused over here. Sometimes the sequence might be here and there, but 70% it will follow an order. Now let's move on to the second paragraph. The polar bear lives in the snow and ice. At the North Pole, there is only snow, ice, and water. There is not any land. People cannot see the polar bear in the snow very well because its coat is yellow white. It has a very warm coat because the weather is cold and north of the Arctic Circle. Now, just read this carefully. At the North Pole, there is only snow, ice, and water. There is not any land. And what is the second question? That there is no land in the South Pole. So, first of all, I want you to tell me, what do you think is the answer for this? So, see, what the thing is, there it's written that at the North Pole, there is no land. But whether the land exists in South Pole or not, that has not been mentioned in the passage. Therefore, the answer is going to be not given. Now, let's move to the third question. The polar bear can stand up on its back legs. Now we are talking about the structure, and the third paragraph is about the physique of the polar bear. This bear is 3 meters long and it weighs 450 kilos. It can stand up on its back legs because it has very wide feet. Now, I don't need to read any further because I found my answer. What is the answer? The answer is true. Stand up on its back legs, stand up on its back legs. Okay, now one thing. Let's imagine the word back was not written over here. If the word back was not written over here, then the answer would have become not given. Now, the last question is, the polar bear cannot swim. Let's read the question further. Now, it's available in the next line itself. The polar bear can swim very well. So, there is an exact contradiction.